Hi everyone, and welcome to this ADP Streamline webinar. My name is Julie Sheridan, and today we're going to be talking about a subject that's of critical importance to multinational companies when it comes to choosing a payroll vendor, and that's how the implementation phase is going to run. With me on the panel today are Eric de Keyser, our Senior Operations Director.
Hello.
And Karine Bale, our Manager of Global Implementations.
Hello.
They're going to be talking us through how to have a smooth and successful implementation process and giving you specific advice on how to integrate the Streamline solution with your existing HCM platform. At the end of the session, you will also be able to download our implementations brochure, which covers the process from start to finish. So Eric, you've been with ADP Streamline since its early days. How has our service offer developed over that time?
Well, we come a long way. Thank you for this question. In the last 6 years I've been here, we've grown, first of all, a number of clients from 12 to up to 1,000 clients. We have developed, we were starting in a payroll environment, so payroll entities that we were bringing live, and going more and more to a wider package of services and going up to, as you said, an HCM solution. So we're adding time, we're adding all kind of connectivities with system of records, we're getting to a broader package. On top of, we have, as the client is signing the contract, they get a service definition. The service definition is linked and is explaining all the services that we deliver in the different countries. So this is very scalable and very clarifying on what is it that we deliver per country and on a global scale. In that sense, I think we've come a long way.
And what would you say are the key benefits of the Streamline solution to multinational companies?
Well, there are many key benefits. I think the main key benefit is that there's one contract. So although you have many different entities worldwide, there's only one contract to be signed where you can add and change entities. The other thing is there's a service definition I already mentioned, so you know by going into the contract that you have all the different services aligned basically over the different countries. On top of, we speak the language, so we have one central language, which is English. We're also moving a bit into a Spanish area because we have in LATAM, of course, more in Spanish-speaking population. But in principle, all the teams that we have speak English and the local language. I would say that to add to this point, that we are very strong in also executing the implementations. So if you look at our profiles, very often we get spin-offs into the implementations, and there we are able to execute very quick to the wish of a client and implement.
Actually, it's interesting you mentioned spin-offs. I understand that's a trend we've been seeing more of recently, that when companies come to implement, they already have a spin-off deal in process.
Yeah, absolutely. It happens more and more often, so bigger companies are spinning off a part of their company. You can imagine there's a bit of a time pressure, because when the signing is done, then within a few months, then all the countries have to be live that are spin-off. So you can imagine sizes between 20 up to 40 countries that have to go live within 3 and 6 months. And we've proven that already several times that we can easily do that. And in the beginning, I say 3 years ago, we had maybe one spin-off a quarter or a year. At this point in time, we're more to one spin-off a month. So there's a lot of work to be done, but we have proven to be able to execute on that thing. That's a very fair increase, yeah.
Karine, we obviously have a proven record when it comes to implementing clients very efficiently. Can you tell me more about the implementation methodology in practice?
Sure. I would say the strength of the Streamline implementation methodology is really the right combination between local expertise and a strong central governance. For each project, actually locally, we have a team of experts in charge of implementing payroll, obviously guaranteeing the local compliancy, but as well close collaboration with our local clients. And at the central level, we have the project manager members, so in charge of deploying the central services and the central tools. All of them are actually reporting to our global implementation coordinator.
Okay, so that global implementation coordinator, what role do they actually play in the whole?
Well, actually, it's a key role in the implementation process. First of all, because it's going to be really the close relationship with our client at a headquarter level. So really ensuring the right execution of the project as well in light of the client strategy at the first role. And second of all, it will be the overall project responsible. So acting as a single reporting point and single escalation point for the project.
So we obviously have quite a lot of people involved in the process. Eric, how many people does Streamline have worldwide supporting our clients throughout the implementation phase?
It's a difficult question to answer in a way. I know from Streamline we're at this point in time with 400 425, more or less, to 430 people. So that is on a central level we're supporting. In the local countries, we're working with our partners. And there that can be between 3 and maybe 5 employees or even more, depending on the size of that partner. You must imagine that we are with 100 partners more or less in 103 countries. So think about 1,000 to 1,400 people that are working on the partner side with us. So as a total package, 1,800 people working in Streamline.
Mm-hmm. So they're very much spread around the globe.
They're very much spread around the globe, and they have a huge cultural diversity. Also, you will see in our own teams. Because just if you look at my personal team in implementation with Corinne, we have up to 200 people in operations with already 33 different cultures and languages in that same team.
Okay, and Corinne, in terms of the milestones, I would imagine that there are certain key milestones throughout the implementation process. Do those tend to vary across countries?
No, actually they are similar, and they need to be similar, because it's really key for us to have standard milestone across the board and across countries, because we're going to be actually monitoring the progresses at a milestone level. So they are absolutely standard across the board, yeah.
So you've touched on standardization there, which is obviously an important factor. But Eric, I'm wondering then how we adapt to clients' different structural setups.
Well, it's a very good question, because depending on the contract that we're getting into Streamline, we can have setups of a client that is different. So although we have a very strong best practice, a proven way of working within the Streamline concept, the client can be different setup. So as I told before, we have a service definition, which is the basis of the contract and the service we deliver. Although the client can be set up as a very centralized client, meaning from, for example, one headquarter can be in Europe and US, they're governing basically the whole client, or they can have like regional setup, where we can have shared service centers, or we have a one-on-one with basically local clients. So all these different structural setups are ideal to work with Streamline, because you have all these different solutions.
And how long would you say, Corinne, on average it takes to have an implementation go through in full?
So at a country level, I would say it really depends on the country complexity and the headcount, obviously, but as an average, for the lower range of employees, so 50 employees, we're talking about a couple of months maximum. And for the upper range, 1,000 employee, we are under 6 months of implementation. So it's quite short time of implementation. If we're talking about the overall program, it will depend on the number of countries, obviously. But as we were mentioning for the spin-offs, the countries are going in parallel. So we can actually have acceleration around that as well. The recent case we have of this month, we implemented around 40 countries in 6 months window, for instance, because of the countries running in parallel.
So there are economies of scale there as well?
Absolutely.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, just to add on this point maybe, is that we have a regionalized implementation setup. So we can easily set different teams to do parallel implementations, like you say, in the different regions. The thing on the client side is, of course, to have the teams prepared to work with us. But basically, we can have any speed that is necessary.
And just on the teams themselves, what would you recommend? That clients have one dedicated team to handle the implementation? Or, for example, would it be better to have different teams in different regions who are more familiar with that particular country or region?
Again, it depends on the speed that the client wants to make. I think if it's, in general, they always have a central team. A central team to govern the whole implementation, can be worldwide. For sure, if they are centralized, they will have a big central team. But then when they go into the regions, they will have regional teams or regional support to go to the local implementations one by one. So I think it's a combination, depending on the speed again. And they can interact, as I said, with the different teams we can offer. It can be central or it can be local.
Let's say, Eric, that you had to devise a set of golden rules. What would they be?
It's a funny question, because we even show it to a client saying these are the key golden rules that we showed to them in the beginning of the implementation. Very simple things. So be sure that you have a clear ending of your contract with the former supplier. It sounds very evident, but in many cases it's still a thing to be addressed. Another thing would be, if you have entities opening, you go to a new country, that the entity is registered. Very basic, but still. If you have an entity, that you always have the employee on board, so we can also run the payroll for them, right? So to be sure that they have the employees on board. And I think as a general element in any of the project, that you have a subject matter expert in any of the different countries where we go, or at the central level that can support us in the implementation. Those are key, very basic key things.
I think, as you say, they sound basic, but in practice it's probably quite easy to overlook these details
Yes,
as well.
it is.
Yep. And Karine, what would you say are the common challenges that multinational companies face when it comes to implementing across lots of different countries?
I would say the first main challenge that we might see within a client organization is really the management of the change within the organization. Really make sure that the time is spent actually prior, ideally, to the project to explain the project. So the benefits of the project to the organization. Locally, obviously, this is the more obvious, but as well the benefit on a regional level, on a global level. So that would be the first challenge that we see, but Eric was mentioning, it's as well needed to make sure that the country are ready, to ensure the readiness of the stakeholders locally, as well as the management of third party, like a work council, for instance, or existing power provider. The second main challenge we see is actually, especially for a larger project, is if actually we have several projects running in parallel. So typically what we see is the payroll implementation, but as well deployment of HR system of record centrally by our clients, and as well shared service center, for instance. And what we see is those projects can create dependency between each other. So basically, as well, creating extra risk, complexity, and therefore delay. What's specific to Streamline as well is that we're talking about small to medium headcounts. So it might create as well, locally, on the country level, some bottlenecks, because the same person might be involved in different projects. So if this is the case, what we do is we actually work on that with our clients at the beginning of the implementation to check out those dependencies and see how to best manage them before starting.
So just touching on the practical aspects there, would you recommend that clients go through the implementation phase at the same time as setting up the connectivity element?
Well, I would say it really depends on the client-specific situation and operating model. If our client actually has got, when we're talking about connectivity, we're talking about a HR central system of record connected with a different payroll engine. So if our client do already have that in place, the data are actually, complete, accurate, and maintained, then I would say absolutely, the lift and shift of connectivity and payroll is an option. Then if we're talking about a new HR SOAR or deployment of the new or the HR SOAR not mature, I would say, where the data are not really necessarily complete or maintained, then we are entering into the dynamic we were discussing about. So we will have two different projects going in parallel, or three, because we'll have the payroll project, we'll have the IT project to make sure that HR SOAR and connectivity are ready, and probably the HR as well project to redesign the HR processes accordingly to ensure the management of the new data flow. So in those cases, we would recommend a stepped approach rather than the same timing, just to avoid the bottlenecks that we've been discussing about and extra risk. And as well to use the payroll engine as a source of truth to help the configuration of the central HR SOAR.
Okay, so the payroll element is really the defining part in that.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah.
I think it's good to add to this also that as you say, the source of truth, we use it. Also do a data cleansing very often on an HR. So you see that the company is very sure about the fact that HR is leading and is fully correct and clean. In reality, you've been running the payroll already, which is a source of truth, and you do basically a cleansing of the HR. So there will be some iterations, 1, 2, 3, 4, to clean up the HR, and that's why it's good to have some phased approach.
Okay, so just to wrap up then finally, what advice would you give to clients who are currently going through their implementation phase?
Well, I would say really it's important is really to build the relationship and the partnership with the implementation coordinator, because it will be the key support helping the client, guiding the client through the implementation. It will help typically as well liaising with the different ADP support department that might be required, like security, legal, partner management, etc. And it will be as well the right person to share recommendation, best practices. So that would be my recommendation for our existing clients.
And add on to this, because it's already what you're saying, we have a fairly flat organization, and we're in a very direct contact with the client, and I prefer to have it like this. So I want us to be close and just make it happen together. So we're always there.
Okay, so Eric, Karine, thank you both very much for your time today and for talking us through what makes a smooth and successful implementation process. This has certainly been a very insightful session and we hope you've enjoyed it. Please remember to take 1 minute to complete the survey, which will pop up after you close the webinar screen. At that point, you will also be able to download the implementations brochure, which we mentioned earlier. Thanks very much and see you next time.